Now, in this section, I want to talk a little bit more about the different types of stress. You've just have an overview now of the different types of stress. We talked about anticipatory stress, situational stress, chronic, acute, daily hassles, and life events. Now, the reason we need to understand a little bit more of what the different types of stress are is mostly because this is where having different types of coping strategies learning different techniques will be helpful. For example, in the anticipatory stress, okay, now the anticipatory stress is when you are concerned, preoccupied, stressed out about something that is not existing right now. It's more of in the future. It could be tomorrow, it could be in a week from now. Um, when you ask yourself, what's really important here? When you ask yourself, what is it that I have control over? Like in these particular cases of anticipatory stress. And I would say it's similar to the chronic stress, same thing with the acute stress and daily hassles, as well as life event. And we're going to be talking about this in the next section. But I want you to start thinking about those kind of questions. What do I have control over? Well, most of the time I have control over my thoughts. So my thoughts about the events that are going on tomorrow or the day after. I could change my thoughts. I could reframe my thoughts. I have control over the places and the things that I'm able to control. So in a sense, when you start thinking about what it is I have control, you only have control over something you can do today. Sometimes you can actually have control over things that are going to be happening over the next few days or the next few weeks. So only then do you have an opportunity to make changes, for example, in the anticipatory stress, for example. So whatever it is you have some control over, so that you could reduce your stress that you're concerned about in the future, that's something that you might be able to do. So, in other words, why bother being concerned or being stressed out or being worried about something that right this very minute there isn't anything you can do about it? Whatever's happening tomorrow or next week from now, if you take things one day at a time, one moment at a time, and check in with what's going on up here, being aware of your thoughts about what's happening, you could stop this thinking before it goes too far, before you've wasted way too much energy, way too much time being concerned about something that right now isn't existing. It's imaginary, right? Remember we talked about imaginary or real. Now in this case, if it's imaginary, your body is still going to be responding the same way because your brain is perceiving this event as real when it's not. It's only in a couple of weeks from now, for example. So you can see how understanding one model, in this case, the fight, flight, or freeze model, understanding that model can help you to regulate your way of managing this stress right now. In some other cases, situational stress, for example, again, asking yourself, what can I do in this situation? I'm in an accident, for example, or I've got my sons are arguing and right now I'm feeling stressed about that. What is it that I have in my control? Well, a lot of times we can't control much what our children do, but we could certainly control ourselves. And perhaps this is where deep breathing comes in, communication comes in, asserting yourself again comes in. So, again, it's helpful to understand the different types of stress and to understand how you are perceiving these situations, how your body is reacting to the situations, so that when you become aware that this is what's happening, is you do an intervention. And we're going to be practicing different types of relaxation techniques during the course. We're also going to be talking about ways to shift your way of thinking, right, about a certain situation. So that's when those type of strategies are going to be helpful to help you reduce the stress. The other thing I'm going to suggest too is of using that rating scale of 0 to 10, right? And 0 could be, I'm really not managing this situation all that well, or 0 could be, this is not important to me at all. So you can use variations of the scale. And 10 would be, I'm managing this, like I'm not concerned about this at all. Or 10 could be, this is very, very important, depending on the scale that you're using, right? So every now and then, using that scale of 0 to 10 to gauge yourself in this moment, to see where you're at, and then practicing a technique, maybe a communication, maybe assertiveness, whatever your technique you've decided to do. And then after that, evaluating yourself again to kind of see where you are. We did that when we did the deep breathing exercise right at the beginning. So you might want to use that scale as well to gauge yourself every now and then when you're going throughout your day. Okay, so that's what I wanted to mention for this section. Let me just add, when it comes to life events, I mentioned earlier, life events are situations that don't happen all that often. Okay, death of a spouse, moving. Hopefully you don't have to move very often, because if you have to move often, you'll notice that the stress can accumulate. But most of the time we move once every 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even more, right? Um, Marriages, divorces, promotions are examples of life events. They're events that happen not that often, but they do happen throughout our life, okay? And we talked a little bit about daily hassles. Now, the daily hassles are the day-to-day, mundane kind of stress that happens most of the time as a result of the daily hassles as well. So when it comes to a life event, there's usually a lot of different things to manage, like when it comes to moving. And the best thing that I could just suggest in cases like that is taking it one day at a time. And when we're going to be talking about relaxation and mindfulness in the last section, we're going to be practicing mindfulness, and you'll see over time. Same thing with the breathing. The breathing would help as well. But over time, practicing these kind of techniques that we've already talked about, or that you're going to be learning about in the other sections, practicing those over time are going to be helpful to you. And again, I'm just going to remind you, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please include them in the Q&A section. And the other thing I want to mention too, I might not have mentioned it in the other section, is um, Udemy usually asks you to evaluate this course fairly quickly in the course. So if you could take the time to evaluate the course, even write a little comment, that's really appreciated. Those type of evaluations are used so that when other students are interested in this course, for example, they could see your feedback. So it's really, really helpful. And it's also really helpful for me, because if I get a poor rating, well, guess what? I'm going to want to, improve that rating. So I might have to make changes to the course. And I really, really appreciate your feedback. So you can add your feedback as well in the Q&A section. Okay, so that's it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.